Okay, this is a song called Music for Airports. And it was composed by Brian Eno back in 1974. And it was designed to calm people before they went on an airplane. It was a specific attempt at taking spatial cues and auditory cues, auditory being our only truly panoptic surround sound 360-degree modality, and designed to create an environment that, in McLuhan terms, the background for which we foreground our thoughts is by nature and design a pleasant one, pleasant being described auditorily. Sound and music is one theme for this morning. The other is a phenomenon that we're very much aware of in some background context, but never aware of in our day-to-day lived realities, and that's the amount of radiation that we live in terms of an environment. And I'm specifically thinking of radio frequency energies. Right now, surging through us, there's cell phones, AM, FM, shortwave, ship-to-shore, police band, fire band, radio frequency waves surging through our bodies, and for which we have no sensory modalities to tune, to pick up, so we create extensions, radio tuners, right? And we tune in those frequencies. And at the last MBA conference in Bologna, Italy, this past June, we were at the home of Guglielmo Marconi, the godfather of radio. And so there's a strong connection this morning to the concept of music and radio. So I have a couple of prepared comments, and then I'm going to show you some slides. Drawing inspiration from several recent events, including hearing Toronto-based pianist Ray Beaumont in recital at this past June's Media Ecology Convention at the University of Bologna, I decided to return to one of my favorite themes, music, for my talk this morning. Music is quite literally in my blood, both in my maternal grandfather's background as a Mexican migrant farm worker in the Central Valley of California, whose one delight at the end of each back-breaking day in the fields was to sit on his front porch, guitar in hand, and serenade the family in the songs from his childhood in Mexico. President Trump will put a stop to that, thank goodness. My father, too, was a musician, a multi-instrumentalist who played a beautiful violin and clarinet, and who taught me the piano at an early age before starting my own formal music training, an education that resulted in a master's degree in electronic music composition in the early 80s from the Center for Contemporary Music at Mills College, at the time one of the most prestigious music programs on the West Coast, whose faculty included Darius Mio, Terry Riley, Anthony Braxton, and two people who I studied under closely, Yannis Xenakis and Robert Ashley, whom I'm going to mention later on. And many famous alumni graduated from there, not just me. Dave Brubeck, for example, is an alum from that program. The other more immediate inspiration for the discussion of music was a lucky find on my part of nearly $20,000 of unspent funds due to an accounting error in a $250,000 grant I received several years ago from the W.M. Keck Foundation for studying the liberal arts in the digital age, a topic that I've spoken and written about before at IGS conferences and media ecology conferences. The found monies were put to use in purchasing a cutting-edge electronic music system that I've begun a series of compositions and performances with. So let me see if I can cue this up here real quickly. One of the songs that you were listening to as you walked in was this here. And this was something that I composed specifically for today in that model of Brian Eno. Music intended to calm us down. Hopefully you were less aware of its presence than more aware of it, because then it's doing its job. Only occasionally should you be drawn to it as foreground, the rest of the time it should be background. Imagine if I put on some Metallica or some other group like that as the background ambience. It would totally change the environment in the room. So this is one aspect of music which is static. It's pre-composed. It has no real a dynamic life of its own outside of what I can manipulate in terms of volume and that kind of thing. Now, one of the things that Corey and I were mentioning earlier was the effect would be much different if there was a mono-point source for the sound, just a little speaker up here, as opposed to the embedded surround sound speakers in the ceiling. That creates the second key thing of the music that I'm describing here, which is spatiality. Acoustics and our ability to perceive sound, because it has a 360-degree radius, works best when the sound field is also omnidirectional. So this music is intentionally designed that way, and we're lucky to have that kind of system in here. Okay. So, as part of this grant, this was the music synthesizer system, part of it that I purchased. And this is specifically a Buchla 200E electric music box. This was supposed to arrive about 3 or 4 months ago. It arrived 2 weeks ago. The intention today was to do an actual live performance of this, juxtaposing static, unmoving music with a live performance. Okay? Unfortunately, it didn't arrive in time to do anything with it, to actually finish the composition. So I am going to be doing this, however, in June at the Media Ecology Conference, and also Ray Beaumont, the pianist I mentioned earlier. She's a wonderful classical pianist, and we're going to do a duet there as well for piano and computer music system that should be quite interesting. So a little bit about this instrument. This is Don Buchla, the developer of the original Buchla instrument. This is the actual instrument that I learned on at the Center for Electronic Music at Mills College. It was formerly the San Francisco Tape Music Center in the Haight-Ashbury of San Francisco in the late 60s. They moved over to the Mills College Music Department in the early 70s, and I started there in 1979. Don Buchla is the inventor of the world's first voltage-controlled synthesizer. His patent predates Bob Moog by about 6 months or so. So if in the Smithsonian Museum, you'll see this instrument now. So it literally has a very historical, prominent importance in the evolution of electronic music system. This is its current iteration, and what you'll notice in here, there's a center strip of where those blue dials are. Those are 4 RF tuners, radio tuners, designed to pick up 4 simultaneous radio waves, and you can control it either through various voltage-controlled analog controllers or computer controllers. You can control any aspect of those, constantly switching radio stations, mixing, matching, time delaying, taking sound that's surging in real time through our system, bringing it to an auditory level, and then manipulating it both in space and time, because there's a 4-channel sound system that manipulates the sound around in this direction in a spatial way and in a time-dimensional way, adding any kinds of digitized time delay effects from a millisecond to many minutes of time delay. So you can play in all kinds of time-space quadratures through the control of this panel. And this touch plates controller system here are galvanic sensing touch plate capacitors that as you move and slide your fingers across it, it actually measures pressure as you roll fingers, etc., because it's all based upon the electromagnetic source materials or sources that are already in our bodies. So it's a fascinating system, and I can't wait to actually play with it. I've been waiting for this for months, and I'm sorry I can't do anything with it today. All you can do is hear about it. How are we doing time-wise here? Perfect. Okay. So this is Nicolas Collins, who was born in 1954, and this is his setup for Devil's Music. Now let me describe this. Nicolas Collins is a New York-based composer who put together Devil's Music, a piece in 1985 that he describes as follows. Devil's Music is a performance based upon global media, local culture, and individual interference. It was developed in '85 out of the confluence of my fascination with early hip-hop DJs, a Cajun love of the splendor of radio, the introduction of the first affordable portable samplers, a simple homemade stuttering circuit inspired by my years as a student with Alvin Lucier. I should mention for a moment, again, the director of the Center for Contemporary Music when I was there was Robert Ashley, and he was a member of this very famous 60s composers ensemble called the Once Group out of Minnesota. he was the director of the Center for Contemporary Music, and at one point or another brought all of the members of the Once group to lead master classes at Mills College. And that included David Behrman and Alvin Lucier and Gordon Muma. So I had a chance to meet and work with all of those folks, and especially Alvin Lucier, who I too was inspired by to do this kind of work. Collins goes on to describe his work this way. In Devil's Music, the performer sweeps the radio dial in search of suitable material which is sampled in snippets of 1 second or less. These are then looped, layered, and detuned. All sounds are taken from transmissions occurring in the AM, FM, shortwave, and scanner bands at the time of the performance. No samples are prepared in advance. The result is a jittery mix of shards of music, speech, and radio noise, sometimes phasing languidly, sometimes driving rhythmically, sometimes careening frantically, a patchwork quilt stitched from scraps of local airwaves. Now, the person that is the godfather of all of this is John Cage. Let's listen to now for just a minute to a little bit of John Cage. Let's see if we can get this to work. This is from a 1956 composition titled Radio Music. So what I want to do in the little time that remains is point to something that will make a little sense in context with what we heard last night with McGilchrist's wonderful AKML presentation. One of the questions, and a very valid one, is what is music? And Leonard Bernstein, the great 20th century composer, educator, pianist and conductor, composer of West Side Story, gave a series of 6 lectures at Harvard University in the 1970s that were captured by public television, asking the question about music and is music a language? And he ties it directly to Noam Chomsky, and they're a wonderful set of lectures. But I want to show you a quick clip that ties into that question of what is music, and did music become the first language, and are all things music, including radio frequency waves. Bernstein starts off talking about the notion that the first sound that was probably intelligible as a linguistic abstraction was the universal word that we have for mother. Every culture in the world has a word for mother that starts with ma, ma. So the theory is that the first sounds of the early humanoids was the sound of the infant suckling at the mother's breast, and the moment the mother removed the breast and went away, the next sound was ah, ah. And they learned early on that the way that was done, ma, 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 it became a musical, linguistic abstraction of the most primal form, connecting the young child to the mother. So that prefaces this in this clip. And now let's watch this short little 3-minute clip.
Eat her. Ma!
Yeah, let's just watch
Now, on a purely phonological level, that begins at sound, begins with an attack, an ictus. Ma! And ends in a descending glide. Ma! That's the way we speak. Ictus plus glide. Of course, the glide may also be upward if the intention is interrogative. Ma! But now let's feel a tremendous intensification of our need, of our hunger, of our impatience. And so we intensify the ictus by prolonging it. Ma! And lo and behold, we are singing. Music is born. The syllable has become a note. Ma! Just eliminating the glide. Or to use the technical jargon of our time, the morpheme is rewritten as a pitch event.
Okay. And taking that, what I was going to show you was the next clip where he then takes that and shows children's songs from around the world all have the same three pitches. Dun, 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 dun. And he plays these musical examples on the piano of all of these songs from all over the world that all have those same pitches, somehow making the connection quite deeply of this musical linguistic abstraction that may be at the heart of this thing that we call language. Okay? Thanks a lot. Okay.